This story begins in silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the heavy, suffocating quiet that follows abandonment. Deep in the Appalachian foothills, where mist clings to the trees like a secret, a dog lay curled beneath the rotting floorboards of an old hunting cabin. Rain seeped through cracks above, dripping onto his fur, once golden, now dulled by mud, blood, and time. His name, if he even remembered it, had long been swallowed by the wind. He hadn't eaten in days. His paws were raw from pacing the same small space, searching for an exit that didn't exist. You see, the door had been nailed shut from the outside. Not locked, nailed. Someone had made absolutely sure he couldn't leave, and just as surely that no one would find him. Nights bled into days. Coyotes howled in the distance, but the dog never barked back. He'd learned that making noise only brought pain, so he stayed silent until the storm. It rolled in like judgment, thunder cracking the sky open. The cabin groaned under the wind, and then a sound beneath the storm. A crack, a splinter of wood giving way. With the last ounce of his strength, the dog pushed against the broken floor. Claws scraped wood, muscles screamed, and then freedom. He stumbled into the storm, blinded by rain, driven by a single instinct. Run. He ran for miles, past rusted mailboxes and abandoned trucks swallowed by vines. He ran until his legs gave out in a ditch beside a county road, his body half buried in wet leaves, his eyes closing against the world. And that's where she found him. Dr. Elena Vasquez wasn't looking for a dog. She was driving home from a double shift at the Regional Trauma Center, exhausted, hollowed out by another night of losing patients she'd fought so hard to save. Her headlights caught the glint of eyes in the ditch. She stopped. Not out of hope, really, but out of habit. Elena had stopped for strays before. Most ran. Some snarled. A few let her help, only to vanish again. But this one... He didn't move as she approached, didn't even flinch when she knelt in the mud beside him. He just watched her with these wide, ancient eyes, full of questions she couldn't yet answer. She gently wrapped him in her coat and carried him to her truck. He weighed almost nothing. Elena named him Silas, after the quiet saint who tended to the lost. She brought him home to her cabin on the edge of the national forest, a place she'd bought to escape the noise of the city, only to find it echoing with her own loneliness. The first week, Silas slept hidden under the bed. The second, he ventured as far as the porch, but bolted back inside at the sound of a car on the distant road. By the third week, he finally ate from her hand. It was a small victory, but it felt monumental. Then came the night the bear came. Snow had begun to fall, soft and deceptive. Elena was reading by the fire when suddenly Silas stiffened. His ears pricked up, his body coiled like a spring. Before she could even react, he was at the window, a low growl rumbling in his chest, a sound she had never heard him make before. Outside, a large black bear stood at the tree line, sniffing the air. It wasn't aggressive, but it was curious, and far too close for comfort. Elena froze in place, but Silas didn't. He barked, a sharp, commanding, fearless sound, and charged to the door, placing himself between her and the glass. The bear hesitated for a moment, then turned and vanished back into the woods. That night, Elena cried for the first time in years, not from fear, but from awe. This dog, this creature who had been discarded like trash, who had every reason to trust no one, had chosen to protect her, not because she'd earned it, but simply because that's who he was. Recovery wasn't a straight line. Some nights Silas would wake up trembling, lost in nightmares only he could see. Elena would sit on the floor beside him, her hand resting gently on his back, whispering, "You're safe now. You're home." And slowly, the nightmares grew fewer. The flinching stopped. One morning, he followed her into the woods without even being called. Then came the hiker. A few months later, Elena was on a solo trail run, deep in the forest. She twisted her ankle on a root and went down hard. Pain shot up her leg. She couldn't stand. Of course, there was no cell service. The nearest ranger station was 8 miles away. She tried to stay calm, But as dusk fell and the temperature dropped, real panic started to creep in. And then, headlights. A park ranger's truck skidded to a stop. And there, standing proudly in the passenger seat, muddy and panting, was Silas. He had run all the way to the ranger station. He barked relentlessly at the door until someone came out. When they tried to shoo him away, he grabbed a ranger's jacket sleeve in his teeth and pulled him toward the trail. They followed. Back at the hospital, the ranger told Elena, "That dog saved your life. There's no question about it." But Elena knew the deeper truth. Silas hadn't just saved her life, he had given her one back. Before him, she'd been drifting through her days, numb from loss, detached from joy. Now every morning began with a wet nose nudging her hand. Every evening ended with a warm body curled against her feet. He had been left to die in the dark. And yet, he brought light. Not the blinding kind, but the steady, quiet glow that says, "You are not alone." Years later, when Elena opened a sanctuary for abused and abandoned animals, Silas was always there. He would greet new arrivals with his gentle eyes, lying beside the ones who were too scared to move, showing them simply by his example that trust could be rebuilt. He never wore a collar. He didn't need one. His presence was his promise. And on the day he finally lay down for the last time, old, peaceful, surrounded by the creatures he'd helped heal, Elena held his paw and whispered what she'd waited a lifetime to say. "Thank you for letting me find you." Thank you so much for watching and sharing this story with us. If it touched your heart, please consider liking and subscribing for more stories of hope and healing. We'll see you next time.